And now it's time for the sponsor perspective portion of our program. Before we get going, a quick clarification. While I'm conducting this next interview and the questions are really mine, the content of this portion of today's program shouldn't be considered editorial. With that, I'm really pleased to welcome Marian Salzman, Senior Vice President of Global Communications with Philip Morris International. Marian, it's great to see you, but let me just start out. Today's program is about outrageously awesome women. You are one of the world's top global trendsetters, or trend watchers, I should say, or trend seers. And I would love to just know whether you see something coming down the line that's going to be a game changer for women. What are the waves that you see as either positive or negative for the women we're speaking to today?
So one of the things I'm really worried about is what this pandemic and kids being at home, being schooled, has done to women's careers. I worry a little bit that we're moving into a world where dad will have a career and mom will have a job, and part of that job includes the home learning maintenance. So I think in the near term, we're seeing families move away from being this idea of two career families to being a career and a job, and then mom's job extends to home education.
You were, I've been fascinated by that. You helped popularize the concept of metrosexual. I've tried really hard to be one. But, you kind of see these things out there, and you yourself have worked at companies, been at great brands. Now you're at, Philip Morris International. And I'm just going to put it on the table. You're because you do on your Twitter, you're a two-time survivor of brain cancer. And so what's your personal story of how you have taken some pretty tough circumstances and prevailed, both as an outstandingly awesome woman, but as someone who's had such health challenges, working in this world?
So let me explain. My brain situation is I've had two stage 2 meningiomas. So in the land of brain tumors, those are the best kinds to have. Stage 1 is completely benign. Stage 2 is fast growing, but not malignant. And I've had the most amazing surgeons and doctors on the planet. I was smart enough to shop around for a doctor and found my doctor at Mass General. I'm a very satisfied customer. And it certainly impacted me to the extent that I don't know if I would have taken this job if I hadn't been through that. Because when you confront science and mortality and evidence, I think you begin to develop a different point of view about all of those things. And the thing that won me over, and Philip Morris started talking to me, I believe, in August of 2017. It might have been very early September. In the beginning, I was like, this has to be a joke. I'm a never smoker. I'm not interested in cigarettes. They're beyond their sell-by date in terms of brand marketing of Marlboro. What in the world would they want with me, and why would I want them? But as I got to know them, and it was really their website, in the beginning, I was like, I don't know what I'm talking about. So the best thing I can do is do my homework. And then I started meeting the people, and I was really amazed by what decent, straightforward, honest people they were, with just boatloads of science that I needed to consume. And I remember waking up one day in January, and it's kind of funny because I had a terrible flu, and now a terrible flu seems like this great omen. I had this terrible flu, and I realized I kind of woke up this morning and I was like, oh my God, I think I'm going to work for a tobacco company. And I started thinking about the consequences. I recognized I would lose friends and colleagues. And I felt like I had an opportunity to change the world from the inside. Why did I need to be a bomb thrower on the outside? It would be better to use the tools and the resources of this big company to get people to stop smoking. So my campaign, which is Unsmoke Your World and Unsmoke Your Mind, is all about telling people, if you don't smoke, don't start. If you smoke, quit. And if you won't quit, change. So I just have an opportunity to use a lot of resources to combat misinformation, to combat bad science, and to convince people to quit smoking combustible cigarettes.
I'm really happy to hear of that frame and that scaffolding where now I understand the very personal link you have to science. But I also want to, just pay tribute to the fact that you've worked in a lot of places before there, and you've had to deal with gender inequality, discrimination. The world that we're sort of talking about there. I know that Philip Morris International, from other folks I've talked to there, is one of the first in the world to have been credentialed as equal pay for equal work across, pay lines. But, I'd love to hear your advice and counsel to other women that are navigating, in less hospitable circumstances. What kinds of North Stars should they have as they think about their career and navigating this terrain, which, let's just be, just be honest, is not fully equal, not fully stacked in the right way?
I joined the work world in the mid-'80s, and it was a very different world. It was an old boys club world that really aggressively welcomed women because they had to, because the world had begun changing. And I think the degree to which there is sexism in the world really only struck me in the last decade, certainly with the horrible stories that came out as the Me Too reporting began. The other thing about my industry, if you think of my industry as advertising and communications PR, it went pink pretty early. I had the luxury of working for women in the late 1990s. I had the luxury of working for a woman my last round at Havas the whole time. So I don't know that I understood it as clearly firsthand. Today, I'm very cognizant of it. I'm very cognizant of the responsibility I have to sit at the table as one of 4 women on our senior management team, sort of the equivalent of an executive committee, that every woman in this company is watching me to be sure that I am advocating for her. I am thinking alongside her. I am pushing her forward. And all those things are real and vital. And I think about it way more than I thought about it in the agency world, where there were more role models. Less weight was on any one woman's shoulders. There was more of a camaraderie of senior executive women. But certainly Philip Morris has going for it the fact I don't have to worry that I'm being paid equally. I'm being paid equally, and I can accept that. PwC has proven that to me. The Equal Salary Foundation has proven that to me. And I can go on and worry about serving as an advocate without having to worry about people not being paid fairly.
Marian, you and I have talked a lot, in the past about this, and I'm always fascinated by people's brands. There are companies that have brands. There are people that have brands. You have your own brand out there. Do you think thinking about someone's brand is a smart way to approach one's career? And again, from a person out there listening right now, wanting to sort of replicate, who's inspired by what you've done, what are the hints to kind of doing great brand development, if you will, at the personal level?
So, yes, I think that we are all brands, and that's probably our greatest career insurance, is having a brand. But it needs to be a we versus a me brand. It needs to be a brand that's about giving back, about sharing, about collaborating, about being part of something. If you're too me focused in your brand, it's going to be alienating to others. So it kind of irks me when young people will say to me, my LinkedIn page is my brand statement. Well, it is, but it's also a statement of what team do I want to be part of? How am I going to make a contribution? I think that we are in a period in history where being collaborative is more important than ever before. And I think that one needs to put themselves out there saying, hey, I'm a team player. I share with you and others. And I think we also need to build out the life part of our personal explanation. One of the things this pandemic has done to us is there's no more boundaries between life and work and home and office and friends and family. We've kind of turned it all into soup. And I think we need to understand how to serve back up that soup to others so they understand who we are and what we care about.
I've had the privilege now of interviewing some of your colleagues. One, was a, not particularly out gay man, but who came and talked to me about his experience of finally coming. As an incredible interview. Talked to your chief scientist, Moira, about how she looks at scientists. Talked to your chief diversity officer. And I just have to say that each one of these interviews, as I'm having you now, you have incredibly fascinating, deep people that I look at this as sort of a enriched environment where you're at. And I'm just going to be candid. For most people who think about old-line tobacco companies, that's not the way gravity is supposed to work in those old-line tobacco companies. What has your company had to overcome to become such a place that would attract those kinds of very enlightened, very people that embrace such diversity. It's just sort of something many people may not realize about your firm. How did it get there?
I think the most interesting thing is you have to make peace with your history. You had to go back and look at yourself in the mirror, tell yourself that you have to accept the truths. You also have to be a different kind of colleague in a company where the external world probably hates you, certainly doesn't respect you, and definitely doesn't trust you. It leads you to be a much better colleague on the inside. It also leads to self-reflection. Working in big tobacco, in any tobacco, even in a sustainable company like ours, requires pretty thick skin and the ability to see the forest from the trees. And I think both those things end up leading to a much more cerebral environment, an environment where people make the time to think about the consequences of what they're going to say or do in a way that I probably didn't in a more flippant environment, an environment of more instant gratification. We're marathoners. This is not a sprint. To change the world's view about our company, about our mission, it's a long haul. It will probably still be hauled long after I finish in this job. And I think people recognize that. So there's also a lot of handing off the baton to others. It's not a very me environment. It's a very we environment.
Well, Marian Salzman, the top global trend spotter I know in my world, but also Senior Vice President for Global Communications at Philip Morris International. Thank you for sharing a bit about your life story, how you got there, and also for supporting today's program. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Steve.